From each happily ever after, every wish upon a star. Let's break down the movies that shaped who we are. From memory lane to now and everything in between. The most famous of films to the ones we've never seen. Decade by decade, all the times we laughed and cried. And with a little pixie dust, they will all take flight. Reliving the feelings, and we're trying our very best. And if they mean the same to you, please be our guest. So hop aboard, we would love to have you as we hang with a certain mouth, the whole gang too. If you love nostalgia stuff, we hope this does the trick. Thanks for joining us as we deep dive the magic.
Hi, and welcome back to the Deep Diving Magic Podcast. I'm KJ.
And I'm Jeffrey. And we want to start off this episode by wishing all of our viewers and listeners a happy and safe Thanksgiving in a few days.
Yep.
So for Thanksgiving, our Thanksgiving episode this time, we are going to be diving into a film from February 24th of 1960, the 45th Disney feature movie. It is a film called Kidnapped. So would you like to start us off with a synopsis or any opening thoughts on that?
In Scotland in 1751, young David Balfour is shanghaied aboard a ship where he meets Jacobite rebel Alan Breck Stewart, with whom he escapes to Scottish Highlands, dodging the redcoats.
Oh my gosh, it's like a whole entire Shakespearean play on the synopsis of this one.
Yeah.
So any thoughts on this before we kind of get to getting?
I thought it was very confusing.
Yeah, confusing is good. Which is funny because it was written, I'll get there, but it was written by the same person as Treasure Island, which was also confusing to us.
Yes. And I discovered while trying to find something to keep me entertained while I was trying to watch this, this is not the only version of this.
Okay.
So through 2013, this was the 5th in a string of 13 productions of this. So, and at that point, I guess the most recent was done in 2005.
Oh.
I can't say I'm going to jump in line to go see those. I pray to God Disney did
So you're
not.
saying I should return those tickets? Come on.
Yeah, I'm praying that Disney did not do another version of this.
Yeah. So as it is a live action adventure drama.
Yeah.
This is also, pull the curtain back a little bit here, breaking the fourth wall, the last Disney feature film before my parents' birth.
I'm sure they're very happy you just announced
Yeah.
that.
So it's based on the classic book of the same name from 1886 by Robert Louis Stevenson, who again is the same person who wrote Treasure Island.
One of our other not so favorites.
Well, just confusing, yeah. Are you ready to jump right in?
Sure.
All right, so we see the credits, and there's like an old-fashioned book. We see the same actor from The Light in the Forest and Third Man on the Mountain. His name is David Balfour, and he's leaving his house or a house, and we also see another guy who's like writing on a gravestone. He's like, I don't know, chiseling a gravestone or whatever, and he's commenting about how the recently deceased person was a good man. The main character, David Balfour, is leaving town. And on his way out, someone stops him because he receives a letter all about his inheritance, and then we learn that the deceased man was his father. He begins his journey on foot, but he is soon told that he has to head to the House of Shaws. But all the locals tell him to stay clear of there. So he has to go to the House of Shaws to learn more about his father and learn more about his inheritance. So he's traveling through, it's like a very eerie night. There's crows, there's creepy music, but he then is finally able to arrive at the House of Shaws, and he is greeted by Ebenezer Balfour, who tries to attack him with a gun until he says that he was told to go there by his deceased father, and we learn that Ebenezer is his uncle.
Yeah.
Correct. So Ebenezer is a very interesting and secluded man, um, who looks like he is straight out of the Christmas Carol, which is ironic because his name is Ebenezer. Um,
True. True.
and then we learn that David's father never spoke with a brother or an uncle, so he has no idea who this guy is.
Yeah.
And
I mean, if you see the guy, you probably wouldn't claim him either.
yeah, but it's late, so he's shown to his sleeping quarters for the evening, and then the next morning they're together again. They're eating porridge. David is asking for stories about the family.
Mhm.
But then it kind of cuts to like it's nighttime already, and there's a storm. There's a Disney storm going on, and they're talking about the family, and it's like a very like heated argument about the family because clearly David believes in what David believes in, and Ebenezer doesn't know what's So there's like arguing about the family, and there's lightning crashes, and David is telling Ebenezer to stop speaking of his father and everything. So then David is told to go up these stairs to like get information about the father. It's like a whole labyrinth type staircase, and he goes up there to because he wants to end the fighting by getting some papers of his father per his uncle's request. But when he gets up to the top, he slips and loses. He slips on a loose stone and he falls out a window. But he catches himself on a beam to save his life, from tumbling to his end, which we learned was like it was a planned fatal accident by the uncle, who was then seen like drinking and laughing. Um, so he's definitely a Disney villain. He's just trying to kill his uncle or trying to kill his nephew, straight out
Never
of The Lion
someone
King.
named Ebenezer, never the villain.
Deep dive into veggiepod@gmail.com. So, but his tone quickly changes to shock when David comes back down the stairs alive. Um, Ebenezer tells Dave what? Ebenezer tells David that his heart isn't good anymore and that he will tell him everything in the next morning. He'll tell him why he tried to kill him and everything. So, but um, this causes David to cautiously lock his uncle in the room for the night. But then we see the next morning that the two of them receive a summons to go visit Captain Hoseason, Hoseason. So they're going to go visit this sea captain,
Mhm.
because Hoseason wants to meet with Ebenezer. So they go and they visit the captain, but then David is conned onto the ship, um, because they said that they're going to tell him something that has to do with his family and the uncle. But in reality, they ambush him and they kidnap him, hence the name of the film. And
Yeah, if you didn't figure that out yet.
so they kidnap him. Ebenezer escapes on an escape boat, and David is shanghaied on the captain's ship.
It could have just been over here, but
I
it
mean,
kept going. It kept going.
so they tie him up and they throw him into the bottom part of the ship.
Yeah.
But then he is transported by like a young crew member, where the young crew member tells David that he is to be sold into indentured servitude for a 20-pounder. This film takes place in 1745, so that's $4,700 today.
Can you imagine?
Being sold for $4,700. I mean, I'm pretty much worth it. So, but then we hear like a bunch of commotion under the ship, and the the captain runs down there to see what's going on, and he sees that the young crew boy has been killed by a drunk crew member. So now Balfour has to take over the responsibilities of the young crew member. Again, confusing. Um, but then the ship is traveling through heavy fog, which causes it to crash into a fishing boat. and there's only one surviving member of the fishing boat who is then brought aboard the captain's ship, and the captain decides to keep the survivor because he can charge him money to pay for his travel. Any thoughts on this character or anything?
No.
No. But they go into some big speech about King George, and the captain tells David that to go sneakily grab weapons because they don't trust this survivor, and they're gonna kill this survivor. But then David decides that he's gonna actually inform the survivor, and tells him that he's gonna be on his side and they're gonna stand together against the captain. And we also at this point learn that the survivor's name is Alan Stewart. Stewart. They begin to grab their own weapons and they threaten the captain, and like a whole big fight emerges. And then Alan kills the cabin boy killer guy, and but they're surrounded, but they are able. What's that?
Like the cabin boy killer guy.
But they never said his name.
Description.
So they're surrounded, but they are able to fend off the men, and they actually win. But David is then distraught because he killed a man, and he's
Yes.
he's a God-loving individual. So then Alan gives a whole nother rousing speech about something that I legitimately didn't understand, but something I did understand is
That
that
was a lot of this movie for me.
Yep, he does eat a Disney apple here. And then David talks very aggressively about Christianity, and they do convince the captain by gunpoint to let them ashore instead of risking the ship. And KJ could care less because she's not even paying attention over here anymore. So they convince the captain to let them ashore, but as they're going to ashore, there's like a giant, crazy Disney storm to the point where like a lot of the crew are failing or dead. So the captain has to ask Alan and David for help, but they're able to avoid a reef and all the rough seas, and even the mast breaks, but they make it to shore. David then encounters a man on the island who was rambling in a different language, but they discover that they speak English. But the man will show David to safety for 5 shillings. I didn't look up how much 5 shillings was. Take it as you want. So then David and the man end up fighting over the shillings, and David is able to fight his way out of getting stabbed and throws the man's shoes over a waterfall. Can you imagine that? You just got out of a sword fight and this dude just throws your shoes over a waterfall on your own island.
Well, he's being a jerk.
That's true.
Guess he didn't feel bad anymore about killing people.
True. I wonder if he feels bad about throwing shoes over.
Probably not.
Um,
Should just killed him too.
Hey, well, then he would feel extra bad. So,
Might have made the film a little better.
But then we meet another guy on the island, who David asks for help to take him aboard his ship, and but the guy tells him to stop asking or associating with this Alan character. Which is when this is when kind of like the synopsis we learn that Alan is a Jacobite, if that's how you pronounce it. He's a Jacobite rebel, again, whatever that means. And we run into some military men on horseback in the woods. The military men get shot, and David runs after the assailant, but the rest of the military thinks that David is then the person that did it, and that David is an accomplice. But they end up escaping. But then David ends up running into Alan again because Alan is the accomplice, and they run through the woods away from the military together.
So supposedly a Jacobite.
Just from the Rising.
Yeah, so that was in 1745 was an attempt by Charles Edward Stuart to regain the British throne for his father, James Francis Edward Stuart.
I mean, there was a whole lot of big speech earlier about King Charles. So.
Well, there you go.
So again, a lot of confusing things, but now David and Alan are back together, and they're running from the military. They hide from the authorities. So then David and Alan argue because David says that Alan's ways are not God's ways, But then, however, they do come to an agreement. But David says that he's going back to his uncle. Like, you know, there's just a lot of confusion going on.
Hope he
Alan,
had plans to kill his uncle when he got
I
there.
mean, he is a Christian man. So
Talk
then,
about two uncles, back-to-back movies with terrible uncles.
so Alan decides that he's going to accompany David back to the House of Shaws, and they escape more soldiers along the way. They get attacked by Clooney's men, whoever the heck Clooney's men are, and
George. I'm just kidding.
So yeah, so they're able to escape these Clooney's men.
George.
But then Alan, these guys realize that Alan is who he is, so they end up being on the same side as them. They end up toasting to retribution for the one true king. They play cards. A drunk Alan wants to borrow money from David for more cards games.
Lesson learned, children. If a drunk person ever asks to borrow money and you see them gambling, don't give them your money. Don't. Lesson learned.
So there's more storms, there's more rain. This causes David to get sick. He catches ill.
Yeah.
Again, probably from the nonstop pouring rain and all the walking. More bickering between David and Alan because they're an old married couple. David then falls over sick. What?
They're an old married couple.
So David falls over really sick now. We see some
I wish I had your commentary while we were watching this.
Yeah. We see some reward signs looking for Alan, and then we see Alan is taking. It cuts to Alan taking care of David, which is nice of him.
Yeah.
And then here's where you want to talk about confusing. Confusing for all the people that are following along every episode of this watch along. This random guy shows up to say that he's now the son of Rob Roy McGregor from the movie we watched like 20 films ago.
I was like, wow. Wow. So you're making a comeback, sir.
Yeah. So the son of Rob Roy
I was kind of sad we didn't see him.
Yeah. Didn't he? I don't remember. So the son
His
of
mom died.
Yeah,
He didn't die.
yeah,
That's what
true.
you're thinking.
Yep. So
No,
the
he
son
didn't
of
die.
Rob Roy McGregor. Wasn't he played by Fess Parker?
No, he was not played by Fess Parker. He was I forgot the guy's name, but he was played by the guy that played Robin Hood.
Oh, okay.
So he was
you're right,
like
Yep, you're
the
right.
Fess Parker before Fess Parker.
Yep, you're right. So this dude's son
More of a
shows
looker.
this dude's son shows up saying that he's the son of Rob Roy McGregor. I don't understand what's going on. I think there was a Jacobite rising in that too.
It was because it's from Scotland.
Yeah. So then they
And the English are always trying to take over Scotland. And then Scotland's like, no, we're our own people. Go away.
So then they decide that instead of having a sword fight, they're gonna have a bagpipe playing contest instead.
Yeah, so
'cause,
they're
sure, why not?
Lo and behold, the last thing you expect to see, there's a bagpipe standoff.
Mhm.
I was just like, what is going on? I feel like
Nothing screams Thanksgiving more than bagpipes, right?
I feel like this has been the hardest movie to follow that we have watched thus far.
We watched Treasure Island.
I actually feel like Treasure Island was not as confusing as this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they survive this bagpipe playing contest, and then they arrive at this bridge.
Oh, you can play the pipes.
Yeah. They arrive at this bridge that they say that on the other side of the bridge is safety for them, but it's protected by soldiers.
Yeah.
So they're very stressed about how they're going to get across. And you know what they do? They very, very, very anticlimactically just make their way across the bridge. So they make their way across.
But you just skipped the biggest part.
I did?
Yes, of them getting across the bridge. They just didn't walk across the bridge.
They like trick somebody into something.
They didn't trick anybody. A lady was coming across smoking a pipe.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
And they're like, if we want to get across here, we need to make it look like we're not in a hurry. Because if we're on the run from them, they would suspect us if we just quickly run across.
Mhm.
But if we take our time, that will really throw them off. They won't think anything. So he buys a pipe from an old lady. He walks to the middle of the bridge. The soldiers are on the other side of the bridge, looking over the bridge, talking about something going on, like in this rebellion. He starts smoking his pipe. His friend starts to follow him across the bridge. And the soldiers are still behind them talking about what's going on
Like I said,
in the rebellion.
anticlimactically.
And then they just casually keep going across the bridge, and the soldiers didn't even notice them.
Nope. So they make it back to the estate
Which
of the
makes me wonder,
Shaws.
had they not used money to buy this pipe, could they have still just got across? Because these guys were really into spilling the tea of what was going on in this rebellion.
It's true. That's true.
I mean,
So they make it back to the house of the Shaws, and then we learn that Ebenezer, our dear friend Ebenezer, obtained the house of Shaws from
timeout. Which uncle do you think's worse?
this one.
I agree. I just wanted to make sure that we're
Yeah,
on the same page. Ebenezer's definitely your uncle tries to kill you.
this is
That's
probably
that's
the
the worst
worst. This is
uncle.
probably the worst uncle until we get to Scar in 30 years from now.
Spoiler alert.
So we learn how Ebenezer was able to obtain the House of Shaws. He obtained it from David's father's estate
Yep.
in a bargain with the father, because both he and David's father were in love with David's mother, and Ebenezer allowed the father to have the lady,
I
which
would
is pretty
love to know
scandalous.
if
A
the
prequel,
lady.
a prequel
Yeah,
about the two of
I don't
them.
know. I don't know if that would be good, but I would really like to know what the mother thought of Ebenezer. Like, was he a looker back in the day,
Dude,
and then he just let himself go
he looks like he deserves to be
because he
in the
lost the
Christmas movie.
lady? I mean, was he a looker?
I don't know.
Well, maybe we do need a prequel, but it cannot be written by the same guy that wrote these terrible books.
So
Just
they are discussing, they're going to come up with a plan to have the uncle admit to kidnapping David in front of a witness. And then,
because they were talking about how it would be hard, like he would never win his case,
mhm,
unless the uncle admitted it, and he said it would be very hard to get him to do that. And then David's like, I've got an idea.
yeah. So Alan goes to the estate, and he is able to trick Ebenezer to admit to the kidnapping. Um, and Ebenezer then realizes that he's been caught and that he wasted his 20 pounds on the kidnapping and that he's been set up. And then it cuts to another scene where we see that David is dressed up very royally and very nicely because he did receive his estate and his inheritance. And then Alan says that he has to go back to the Highland, and the end. We've made it to the end of this incredibly confusing film. I would love to hear your thesis about the film if you've watched it, because it was quite confusing
I feel like it would have been so much better
if it didn't happen.
if we had more bagpipes.
Oh my God. I went to this camp one time.
I really don't know what could have
No.
made this
I
better.
went to this camp one time, and they
You
used
learned
to
how to
like
play bagpipe.
they used to like wake us up by playing the bagpipes. That's true. So this is a film that happened. I know your thoughts already, but I would love to hear your thoughts and ratings and then your list upon a star.
So, before we get into my thoughts, when I was doing some research on this, I kind of giggled because you were like, yeah, I don't know how this is going to go because it's based on a book that's also by the same guy that wrote Treasure Island.
Yeah.
So, going into it, I was like, oh no. Um, and then ironically, I giggled because I actually found where it said that audiences in the United States were very unenthusiastic about this film because it was compared unfavorably with Disney's decade earlier Treasure Island.
Yeah, this dude's batting 1,000.
I was just like,
Maybe it's just not for us.
and then I have to agree. Maybe it was better when it came out.
Well, just maybe it wasn't for us.
But I have to agree with the statement that it was hard to follow Treasure Island. This was just as hard, if not harder. There was nothing that really grabbed my attention. I didn't want to keep watching it. The bagpipes. It did have some comedic points, I guess, but in all, I wasn't a big fan.
So what about
IMDb gave it a 6.6
It's
out of
0.3 less than the one that I did last week.
yeah, out of 10. I don't know if they watched the same one.
The prequel. They watched the prequel.
Maybe they watched one of these other 13. I don't how did they make 13 of these? Um, I don't even know if I could put myself watching another one just to see if another version's better. I wasn't a fan.
Would you rate it?
I rated this one a 2.
2. So then, what a segue. I'd like to point out that this mug of Mr. Toad is still not looking at you because it's still mad at you for taking it off your list.
I'm fine.
Does this
know.
film make
No,
your list upon a star?
with a rating of 2, I don't know if this film would ever make my top 100.
So then, what is your list upon a star through 2 movies of the 1960s?
Okay, so since we're not changing, I have Sleeping Beauty, Dumbo, Lady and the Tramp, The Three Caballeros, The Shaggy Dog, Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, Fantasia, Toby Tyler, or 10 Weeks in the Circus, and Saludos Amigos.
And mine is also not changing. My list upon a star is staying as Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, Pinocchio, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Sleeping Beauty, Lady and the Tramp, The Three Caballeros, Cinderella, and The Shaggy Dog. Thank you so much to everyone who has been who has watched our bonus episode and who has let us know what they think and how much fun they're having with it. If you haven't watched our bonus episode yet, it is on our channel. It is where we find references to each of the films from the 30s, 40s, and 50s throughout all of Walt Disney World, including the theme parks, the resorts, and Disney Springs, and all the places in between.
Yeah.
We would love to hear from you and all your thoughts, and if we should do more stuff like that, deep diving the magic pod at gmail.com. Our next episode, we are diving into another live action film, a film that is much, much more highly regarded than this one. That is film number 46 from May of 1960, and that is a film called Pollyanna. And I would love for you to tune in next time to see if we feel the same way or what we have to say about that.
I'm just going to tell you going into it, I had never heard of it.
It's a big movie. It's
I
like a
know,
big
you told me
deal.
that, and I was like, I've never heard of it. So,
We'll save it for next time. But
yeah.
hope everybody has a safe and memorable Thanksgiving in a few days. We are very thankful for all of you for taking the time to watch and listen to us and spread the word. If you are newer here, we're on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and of course our email is deepdivingthemagicpod@gmail.com. Please let us know what you think, what you're thankful for, what that random little door is in reference to in our bonus episode. But honestly, truly, thank you so much. And this was a film for sure. But would you like to take us out?
Yeah. Thanks for deep diving the magic.
Bye.
Bye.